I appreciate Bob coming up, and Lucy, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. We're going to have questions now, and let me just end with one thing. At Riverkeeper, we're continuing to work with whoever will work with us. I have been meeting with the Department of Environmental Protection, and I spoke to the Assistant Secretary today, who asked me to share with you that we are, as an entity, working with the department. The department is working with GP, and so I don't want you to think that there's an impasse on this. I believe that there is still an opportunity for a win-win solution. I believe that there's something that we can all work toward that will solve some of the problems. I want to again emphasize the improvements the mill has made. Just since the administrative order was passed, the difference between what was going into Rice Creek then when that court proceeding took place and now it's light years away. So I believe with technology, with willingness to work together, that we can find a solution to this. So that's it for me. I want to hear from you. What we don't have but a single microphone, so I'm trying to figure out, I want to make sure whoever asks a question, that question can be heard. So maybe if I can hear it, I'll repeat. And then if you direct it toward Bob or Lucy or myself, and we have about 40 minutes, so we will, yes, in the back.
Is this plant in the GP or in the pulp and business, is this a very unique plant? And are these problems someplace else? And have they been solved someplace else? Or are we just got something that's totally totally on our own, sort of one-off?
Did everybody hear that? I'll kind of generalize the question. Are the issues that that Georgia Pacific and Palatka is dealing with, is it unusual linked to that plant, or is it something industry-wide? Bob, you want to take a handle with that, or Lucy?
No, actually, if you want to look up, I used as an example in talking to Steve Patterson. If you go up to the Canadian area in British Columbia, the salmon fishing area, those are pulp and paper plants that are working under much more stringent standards. If you know anything about that area, if you toss a cigarette butt in the river up there, they shoot you because of the salmon fishery. And those plants are working in compliance with the standards. Now, if you talk about zero effluent, for example, which is a dream of the pulp and paper industry, every pulp and paper industry does what they call closing the loop, which means you're recycling as much water as possible. Now, if you look under something called Meadow Lake, it comes up on your net, that's a zero effluent plant. So throughout the industry, no, this is not unique at all. These plants are working quite well, and they're reducing and operating by standards. This standard is not any more stringent than places I've worked. Nova Scotia Pulp Limited up in, we did the plant there in 1964, right on the Kansas Strait. Scott Maritime's up there. Brown Paper Company in Berlin, New Hampshire. I can go down the list of paper. It's not unique. No, this is a problem that is standard in the pulp and paper industry. So, did that answer your question,
yep.
Sir?
I have
a comment and add on to that.
Oh. Yes.
And I'd like to just point out that probably the manufacturing process is a typical craft process. Would you agree?
It is.
And what makes this situation a little unique, and part of the reason I was disturbed that there was less innovation, is because it is a unique discharge site. Those large volume ponds are one of a kind. Usually they're much, much smaller with a much shorter retention time. That wastewater stays in the ponds for about 30 to 40 days. And way back when, that was a good thing, because the more time you had in the ponds, the better treated it was. Things are a little bit different now. So that's different. A about the mill and also the discharge site into Rice Creek. There are no other, that I'm aware of, situations where you're discharging 90% wastewater into 10% stream and trying to meet Class 3 water quality standards. That's tough. That's really tough. And the other thing that's a little bit complicating about this particular discharge site is the fact that Rice Creek, it's right there, but you know, our river is very peculiar in a lot of ways. We have reverse flow, that saltiness kind of comes and goes at its whim depending on the weather, and connectivity, salinity, saltiness is one of the parameters they're trying to address. So in that sense, it is a little bit unusual, and the problems facing GP and DEP in trying to meet Class 3 water quality standards in Rice Creek are perhaps a little more difficult than it is in other places in the U.S. Got a comment on a comment?
I brought a picture of a plant I did. It's a methanol plant. You can all look at it. It's about 4 times the size of the Georgia Pacific plant, and that's the Mississippi River in the background. And we were discharging into the Mississippi River. You can pass that around. I hope I get my picture back. But that building on the left is 15 stories high. That's a plant that makes this plant look small. So yeah, it's a problem I've been facing all my life in chemical plants, plastics plants, on the Ohio River. It's as I said before, this is a complex problem, chemical engineering problem. It's like brain surgery. You have to have a brain surgeon do brain surgery. You do not have a proctologist do brain surgery. My problem with this is being rude, and I will say it directly, the problem is they have had proctologists working on this problem instead of chemical engineers.
Well, is there another quote? Yes, sir.
How similar is this to Bellingham, Washington, as to the potential destruction that was caused there?
I'm not familiar with that.
There's another GP.
I think that this is a GP plant that you're passing around. I've done 3 GP plants. One was a methanol plant on the Mississippi River in 1971-72. I was chief engineer of the company and the project manager. Then I did a formaldehyde plant for GP in Crossett, Arkansas. So wait a minute, I've only done 2. Well, this plant I came to in 1950, as a matter of fact, when I was 13 years, my father put in the tissue machine for it. So I've been coming to this plant for a long time. But
Well, Bellingham, I believe, if I remember from my textbook, it destroyed the bay.
it can't, yes.
Completely destroyed the bay. And what they did was they dumped it in the Pacific Ocean.
Well, yeah, and it's Murphy's Law. If it can happen, it will happen. This is what I'm saying about the pipeline. I'm saying, look, I want to be clear. The pipeline is the way to go, as long as you're putting clean water through. I don't want to put water down Rice Creek and flush out Rice Creek into the, is that all right to say, Neil?
Well, it's your opinion.
Yeah, I would rather have a clean tube, reduce the effluent, cut it in half, and then have clean water. If you had distilled water going down the tube, you wouldn't care.
To improve the quality of the river.
Yeah,
That's right.
but
How are you going to do that?
if you take the root of the pipeline, it cuts across there by the primary clarifier, that little black circle, then it gets buried, and it's buried and buried and buried, and when it hits the river, it goes underwater. So how are you ever going to tell what's going into the pipeline?